All right. Good morning, everybody. We're just having some morning conversation with Stephanie and Nathaniel. This is my friend Stephanie, who is a medium, a psychic, a channel, very into the metaphysical exploration. And I myself am in the astrological, thinking about archetypes and that dimension to things. And we've both been seekers and enjoy having conversations together and having coffee or tea or whatever in the morning and just seeing what we talk about. So,
I
this
got my
morning.
Zephyr Hill. I got water today, Zephyr Hills.
Awesome. So how have you been, Stephanie?
Things are good. Things are good. And, just interesting to watch the energy shifting on the planet. I feel like we're headed the right direction. So that's good.
I I sent you an article. I know that was a little last minute this morning, but like when I had my morning wake up time, I landed on an article that was reportedly a channel from Venus. And I know you've got some knowledge in that department with the Venusians and that idea of thing. And I kind of take a lot of it, with a grain of salt. It was very generic in some ways, or the language and the terminology is always different. But it brought forth an just this key idea that we're kind of stepping into like a new dawn, a new day, where things are getting brighter, things are alleviating, and it mentioned the idea of um, karma free, the idea of things like kind of all you've mentioned before, things being like a time where all karmas are revealed and kind of it's kind of like we're seeing. I don't know, how would you describe the idea of like karma being revealed and um the idea, I guess it's like it's metaphoric in some ways, but how would you describe it,
Right.
like being karma free, debt free, moving into this future that's like a new dawn, a new day?
So Arya always says we're in a point in the universe where all truth gets revealed and all karma gets balanced. So once it's balanced, you're free of it, right? You're not going to keep attracting magnetically into your life something that your soul or your spirit believes you have to fix. So as we free those bonds, then we really have this amazing power to create and create well. And it's fun to see people that are doing it well. And, a lot of the younger ones have really figured this out. A lot of these young 18, 19, 20-year olds have said, you know what, I'm going to run my own business and I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's how it's going to be. And so, we're really at this precipice too of becoming more a planet of earthlings, that where people say, I'm from Earth, not just saying, I'm from this country or I'm this ethnicity or something like that. Like, we really have to get to this planetary oneness where we realize we're all the same. We're all humanness. Some of us are more human than others, but we're all humans and we need to unite as a species.
Okay.
That makes
That
sense.
sounds, yeah, that makes sense. I do a lot of contemplation when it comes to the idea of karma and what I was imagining and envisioning as, as that idea of all coming together and kind of being whole and one, and it's like not having this kind of fragmentation or something to it, or like missing pieces, lost pieces, forgotten pieces, and the archetype and the ideal of like the Christ consciousness and that miraculous, like when you are in like the metaphors of that 0 point energy of perfect creation, that being like a sense of being karma free or debt free, or there, all is one, the atoned. I also was like, on the other side, contemplating like if karma is cause and effect, isn't there always a never ending chain of cause and effect that's going to lead one thing to another? So in a way, there is no escape or end to
No,
karma.
that,
But
yeah,
but at the same time, paradoxically, you can, by not attaching to the various causes and effects, you're free of it. And that's kind of, I mean, because things continue to happen. One thing causes another thing, but when you're not involved or invested in what those causes and effects are, you're free of them in a sense. So it's like it's a choice in a sense. The degree to which we participate in karma is what I was thinking. It's like It's how we choose to participate, and we're just making better choices about what karmas or what causes and effects to get wrapped up in, to get involved in. And so it's that way of freeing ourselves from a lot of dense, dark, heavy, hidden, all of that level of karma that's keeping a more creative story from occurring. What do you have for me with that?
So there, it's not connected at all. Cause and effect have nothing to do with karma. I can see how you would think that. It has absolutely nothing to do with it at all.
Okay,
So the reason is that karma has a magnetic pull.
I see
So
that.
cause and effect, you know,
So then
um,
is it just language? Because I mean, that's a lot of the
no,
language you
no,
hear and
it's
see
it's
with
it's a
karma.
it's not language, because language is, every word has a vibrational frequency. How you interpret a word is actually how you respond to that word. Like, that's why English is a tough language, because you might have a completely definition for the term love than I do. Um, so if we go into cause and effect, um, there's a physical aspect to that, but then there's a spiritual consciousness aspect to that, right?
For sure.
And so if you look at someone being propelled into karma, they're going to be magnetically pulled. So let's say that you and I knew each other at Gettysburg, and we fought on the battlefield at Gettysburg, and we are magnetically connected by that event, and it didn't go well, and we're both of our souls are like, yeah, we need to try that again. Then we get magnetically pulled into each other's realm, and in karma, you're going to meet that person somehow. Like, you're not going to
I
be able to
see.
magnetically avoid that person, right?
I
So that
I see those circumstances.
magnetism, hmm?
I mean, I see. I just see what you're describing.
So the magnetism brings you there. Whereas you can have somebody that's not, you can have people in your life that are not there because of karma. You can have somebody in your life that he's your boss, and there's a cause and an effect, and there's no karmic pull to it all. There's no charge on it.
I see. I mean, so what I'm seeing is this word karma. I think there's one thing that's been labeled karma, and I think it needs two descriptors or something. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a book called The Kabbalion. It goes over like seven
No,
hermetic principles, correspondence, vibration,
no,
rhythm.
no.
One of them is cause and effect, and that cause and effect consistency. Um, I see it equated with karma in some ways. Um, but I also definitely get this
Right.
magnetic pull of circumstance or necessity or something that is in a sense it's in that also it's magnetically pulling us because of something prior, something that has generated and caused that magnetic attraction or repulsion, wouldn't you say though?
But see, a lot of people look at their lives based on, I'm Stephanie, I'm Nathaniel, cause and effect here. Whereas you
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
are
yeah.
talking about a much deeper,
Yeah, yeah,
most
yeah.
people, when they talk about cause and effect, they're not talking about it here. They don't
I
think
get
about,
that.
oh, this
Okay.
is linked to
I'm not
Gettysburg.
concerned. I'm not concerned. I guess I have not been concerned with most people. When I talk about cause and effect, I mean subtle cause and effect too. Things that involve past life threads, things that are beyond the here and now, because a lot of people, for sure, a lot of people that just down here, boots on the ground, are just going to look at cause and effect and say, oh my gosh, this came out of nowhere. This doesn't make any sense. And if you're not looking at deeper and higher chains of cause and effect that can be in the picture, it doesn't. I mean, I think that's
I,
part of the weirdness about it.
one of my Native American elders, he had said, that you have an action,
Uh-huh.
and then uh, you can observe, like you can be the observer of the action, because it's the
Uh-huh.
observer effect in quantum physics. And then there's a
Uh-huh.
reaction. So there's an action, but there's a period of pause between action and reaction.
Uh-huh.
And I think what's happening as we're becoming evolved in our consciousness is we're becoming more aware. As before, we were not aware at all of that we
Yeah.
are the observer, and we can change the outcome.
Yes, yes. I feel like this is this is the secret or the key involved with all of these descriptors of how, we're going into this karmic free zone or this new dawn, this ability to be free in that moment that is highly creative, that is making a choice rather than just going with the cascade. The cause and effect chains in place, no matter what they are, or the magnetic pulls. There's something to karma where the magnetic pulls are also, you could say, like where we're charged, where things are kinked up or charged or blocked or whatever that get us pushed or pulled into whatever circumstances will release or
Right.
review that type of experience. The more we can contemplatively get clear and centered and zeroed in the middle, where we're making a more conscious choice, I do think it frees it up so that it's not the same cycle or loop or just kind of cascade. It's like there's a
Right.
sense of more freedom, more fresh creativity on the horizon that's not as locked in to just going with the cause and effect or just
And it,
going with
yeah.
whatever's been locked in.
And I think we've got to power up. I mean, what we all have on this planet is we are incredibly power deficient. We've lost our power. We've given it away to other people. We're very weak on energy. Our food supply is tainted. We don't exercise enough. And so it is about how do we get back to the proper human diet or the proper diet for your physical structure, and how do you reclaim back your health and your power and your strength, and not just be buying the, what's out there in society trying to tell you how to be. You've got to get back to trusting your own intuition, your own instinct. And we've
Yeah,
lost instinct in a big way. And we've got
yeah.
to get that back, you know, reclaiming our instinct. And I think that's, important across the board. And in the past, sexuality was a big part of that. I mean, sexual energy, the ancients knew it was a power source, that sexuality literally creates the power of life. And we have really skewed our understanding of sexuality in a big way.
Oh, I agree. And I think one of the most standout features is just like it's not that one side of the extreme or the other is the bad one, but I could see a swing in the sexuality pendulum where both are off center of missing the mark of what is true in sexuality, where we've had all of this conservative where it's like sex is bad, sex is wrong, or all this thing that says no, where you'd have to wait till you get married and it's hidden and it's taboo and it's limited and it's blocked and all of that and it's repressed really hard to create a problem. And we see now more modern this swing on the other end that's just like hedonistic, permissive, do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Everything's free, it doesn't have, there's no ramifications, it's just what feels good. And in the middle there's this place where it's mindful and it's contemplative of what that power is, what is that exchange, what is the mystery. I mean, because we can go, I mean, the mysteries of life and death and sex and all of that wraps up for me in the archetype of Scorpio, but just sex is so much more than, opposite Scorpio with Taurus, just what feels good, just what is the sensation and the physical act. There's so much
Right. Right.
metaphoric, divine, all of that. But
Like that's, you're putting that together really well. And if we look at that from an energy, just if we look at it as gas tanks, and this is my energy gas tanks, when you're repressive, you're sitting at the gas pump and you're refusing to put any gas in your tank at all. That's
yes,
so you're
yes,
not getting the gas. You're parked at the
yeah.
station and you're just not getting any gas at all. And when you're
And I know where we're going
hedonistic,
with the other end.
then you're filling up your gas tank and it's pouring out of your car because you didn't turn it off and it's just going everywhere. And then the energy disperses and you're not holding on to the energy. It's like you've got holes in your gas tank and it's just going everywhere. And by the time
Yes,
you leave the gas station 3 miles down the road, you're on empty because
yes, that's
you've
the
kind of
opposite.
fallen into a stupor, like a sexual stupor, if you will.
Yes, yes,
But
that's
the
the
but
that's a fun way to think of it, like a gas tank. That's good
but
too.
the sweet spot is you got a full gas tank, you're driving a Maserati, and you are going 120 miles an hour, and you are
Yes.
using your power, and you are having a blast because you're
You know what?
centered and you know how to use your power.
The that center spot, I really love that center. It's like it's walking the razor's edge,
Right,
and it is the metaphor of Christ consciousness.
right,
I
right.
really think of Jesus Christ Superstar as that idea of being totally whole and at one in yourself, in your consciousness, to be able to find that sweet spot. And are you familiar with Rudolf Steiner at all?
A little bit. That's Waldorf school, right?
There's a concept in a book I'll put out there for whoever that's called Lucifer and Ahriman. And it's a book that conceptualizes these two forces. One of them is very rote and mechanical and conservative and repress, all of that end of the swing of the full, and that's Ahriman. And on the other swing, you have Lucifer, which is this very you know, illusionary, glamorous, liberal, all of these qualities that are just permissive and all of that. And these two forces, how they play with consciousness. And then he talks about that fulcrum in the middle, this centered, moderate, temperate. It's that Christ consciousness. It's from that tarot card, the angel pouring out of both
Right,
cups.
right,
It's
right, right.
that concept.
So
But
what we've lost in the ancient knowledges and the ancient Egypt knowledges, right? And you know, clutch your pearls if this gets to you, right? And I'll probably blush. I don't know. We'll see. But when we talk about tantric sex, right, and we get back to this idea of tantric, the idea
mhm,
was it was a power source. And the Ankh in
mhm,
Egypt, that circle with the crisscross in Egypt, that was actually used to anchor in the energy during sexual intercourse so that you could then, when a person would have an orgasm and they'd reach release, they would anchor that energy. And instead of you just having and the energies just disperse after your experience, they knew how to flip that energy as a fuel source back into their bodies and use that for fuel. Right.
mhm,
And
mhm.
what's the phrase everybody says at the peak experience? What do people say?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. So they're linking back into God's source because that is a window back to source. But you can do that in a peak moment of like artistic endeavor if you're a painter
Yeah.
or when you
See,
have when you're
it's
in the
just
presence of God.
it's the metaphor of peak experience in the same sense that the physical sexual act is the demonstrated metaphor of two things that are opposite and complementary becoming one. It's like I mean, I think you can see like nature is a good teacher, and that is one place in nature that definitely holds the mystery of two becoming one, and that that power exchange, that power merge, that transfusion of oneness.
Right,
And
right.
in that, I mean, and there's so much that's been lost between what its value is and the ways that it has been degraded, or people have been distracted, or all the different you know basically all the societal messages we've gotten about sexuality. If you think about all the messages, everything is selling you something. Everything is and we've all been buying versions of sexuality that are a little bit more base and not really showing the value. And if you think about what religion is in a mainstream sense, across the country, there's not a lot of space, I wouldn't think, in any, think about any church, any Christian, I can't see it, but like, in any religious place in America where you really hear about sex in relation. It's like it's not something that people are taught about or talked about. It's not something that's mainstream. It's still got this taboo, hidden quality to it.
And
And
there's a
that's what I
different, yeah, I agree with you totally. There is a hidden
it's
taboo quality, but there's a huge difference between the physical act of sex
hmm
and making love to an individual.
oh for sure. Oh for sure.
And
It's
and it's such a deeper, richer experience when you are like lining chakras, which when you do tantric, you're aligning all seven chakras together. And that is an experience that's over the top. And you know what I mean? And I think a lot of the younger generations going for the quick sensual, sensory experience.
Yeah.
and
The
they
quick
don't really know
hookup,
how
the
to
quick link
access
up.
that deeper level, really.
Yeah. I've always joked too that, all that mindlessness with it is like swapping sloppy karma. When you're doing it all in that mindless kind of loose way, it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
you're just swapping sloppy karma. But what would you say? So knowing all those dimensions and such, there's also um lots of things promoting like group tantric experiences, kind of like, this is kind of taboo, but like the orgy of it all. And that used to be something that was um a thing back in the day in the Greek Roman times, in whatever context, but like what's the difference and like, something that's just like a commune saying, hey, we're all just, we're having tantric sex, so just doing all of this together is okay versus something that is more mindful. What is the discerning line between where sex is something spiritual
Well,
and
let
profound and where it's base?
I got you. So look at what happened to Rome when they were doing the orgies. It fell,
I I was gonna say, yeah, I
right?
know. That is quite
A-
apropos.
And and it's I mean, if you're looking at a connective, loving experience, can that be more than two people? I personally have not experienced that, but I don't see the reason why you couldn't have more than two people involved in a loving connection situation.
I
Or even
agree.
have you could even have a 24-hour fling, so to speak, with someone that changes your life forever. If
I
you've seen a
agree.
movie called Lost in Translation, it is a fantastic film. Have you seen Lost in Translation?
I have not, but
Oh, honey, you got to see that. It's with Bill
okay.
Murray and that beautiful blonde girl, Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
And it's about, they don't, you know, it's about this loving connection they have when they meet in Japan. And that's a
Uh-huh.
very tantric experience the two of them have, but they don't ever actually end up having sex. But that
Uh-huh.
movie is amazing. You got to see Lost in Translation. It's
So
it, it's talking about that deep soul to soul connection that doesn't even have to involve physical sexuality to still have a tantric experience. You don't have to have
yes.
sex to do that, really.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. You bring up such a wonderful dimension of this. This is going deeper than than I would imagine most people dive. But I don't think it's the important part is I don't think it's one size fits all. I think that for, the idea of two becoming one, I would say is fairly complicated enough for a lot of people to lovingly do well, to consider forward experiments that involve more. But I think that those situations where you can have like the word of like a throuple or something that is mindful and those occasions where someone floats in and changes your world, spirit works outside the lines, and so there is something that we could say is accidental or serendipitous and synchronistic in those soul experiences that will progress us to whatever next level of relating we are ready for. And I've always thought that, like you said, the discerning factor is the degree to which there is that loving connection, and I've always equated it with a sense of mindfulness versus mindlessness. And I'd say that getting that kind of stable connection with one other individual working
Hmm.
well is quite the feat and the undertaking and the accomplishment. And so balancing and triangulating it or whatevering it further or faster and all of that, that would require a certain amount of finesse that I think gets more and more challenging the more people are involved.
Right.
Um,
So,
so
yeah. I just had
go
wanted to
ahead.
share something before we run out of
What's up?
time because I know we don't have a lot of time today. And man, we've got to pick up from this on the next conversation. Um, wow, that plane is really low. I don't know if you heard that plane or not.
I
Plane. I
did.
live next to the airport, so the plane's really low. But do you know the history of the saying "two ships that passed in the night"?
Yeah, well, I don't know where it comes from, but I'm familiar. I'm familiar with the phrase, the metaphor, and what it
Okay, I
entails.
know
But
where it came from because I learned it from my Danae elder. So
okay.
back when the ships would go back and forth between the US and England, say 1800s, you very seldom would see a ship. But if you would see a ship, they would both drop anchor,
Uh-huh.
and they would sometimes stay a week or two and have, people would have a romance knowing that at some point they got to pick up anchor. One's headed to England, one's headed they were headed in opposite directions. And
Hmm.
so that's literally where that comes from, two ships that passed in the night. They would drop anchor, spend time getting to know each other, but eventually they have to go on. So I just thought it was
Yeah.
really cool. That's where it comes from.
That I think of how much in getting into karma in the world and just humanity, if there are all these past lives that have been lived and all of the threads of their experience and memory that's, been handed down and handed down, all the remembering the times where it was all about the ships and the ship travel and how much, like, wasn't about planes at all. Long distance travel was by ships, and it was the ocean has this quality too that is very dreamlike, that's very mysterious, that's very, somebody comes in and somebody floats out, and you don't know if you'll ever see them again. They're in another country, they're off to another adventure. And how many connections that have been ships in the night have had those meaningful transfusion moments that have carried some karma, some experience, some change in that person and generate. And I think that's part of the beauty and the mystery and the splendor when you find those same experiences or people, those threads carried forward again. Those, like, I don't know, those moments
Right.
where the universe winks and you remember, you recall, for those that look into it, I guess. But that just phenomenon of how life does bring those moments together like that, the ships in the night and the,
It's fun. It's really, really
it's
cool. I mean, and I think, what we're seeing with a lot of the younger people is there's this push towards asexuality. As in, I'm not going to have sex with anybody. I've seen the disasters of my parents. I need to figure out who I am. I'm just going to be with myself.
oh
And
yeah.
that is also a trend amongst the younger people because they don't want to have other people's energies in their fields until they figure out who they are.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, I definitely see that. And I know
Yeah.
that the pendulum swings from generation to generation when you have a lot of permissivity or a lot of, everybody's free to go wild. A generation will question that and rebel and push the other way and say, like, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, wait until I'm married, or, I'm not going to do it at all. Or so there is that too. And I've also seen how the younger generation, in that there's so much being explored about the identity, there's a label for so many different things. There's so many different variations or ways to describe what they are looking for or open for in themselves and others, that it, like, every time there's a twist or a turn, it gets a new word or a new prefix or a new, so there's all these different sexualities that never existed in the vocabulary before, that have come about in a way that is, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the over labeling of things.
It's a reflection that they're searching and they're trying to figure out who they are, and none of the labels fit them, so they create a new one.
hmm
But
I
I'd
love
like to
there's
see us free of the labels. How about no labels at
yeah,
all?
there's so my mind goes in this axis when the labels and the words and what are the letters and what do we call it is all very Gemini, splitting it up into this, and then if we split it into that, what do we call these? What do we call these? On the other end, you've got Sagittarius, which is what's the big picture? What's the big aim? What's the broad? And at its truest self, there's something big and whole that is it, and it's something as old as time. It's not anything new I mean, there is new, always, but there's also something that is classic and old and traditional and timeless in that quest, in that search for identity and what sexuality and spirituality entail with it.
I think next time talking about identity, social identity, and how identity is constructed and reconstructed, that'd be
Hmm.
great maybe to segue next time because, identity is also linked to language. cultures are linked to the language. You know, if you the Amish still speak their original
That makes
language,
sense. Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
what else constitutes a social construct in a society group, in a metaphysical group, in a extremely Christian approach, in an extremely
Yes, the
Muslim approach?
language.
And then how do we get to a universality of language? Like, you know what I mean?
Ah,
Like,
yeah.
how do we
Because
get
that's
to
what
where we're accepting of everybody?
that's what when it comes to the differences in religions, and even like when I was like for example that Venusian channel thing this morning, all the different New Age vernacular, ascension and atonement, and solar fly, all the different vernacular, the vocabulary is what splits the hairs of different denominations and different cultures and all of that. And how do we find that universality for expressing that oneness and wholeness? I do think that's going to become a big feature too. I wanted to say just a couple things. Like we have had our 420 moment with Jupiter and Uranus coming together yesterday, and nothing profound on the day. And it's not really ever that I expect something on those days. But I wanted to mention that I feel like this tone now, this next little bit, there's a lot in the sense of technology, growth, collectivity being developed and planned, that when we get into 2025, those two planets go into Gemini, which is language, which is also like blowing a dandelion and dispersal. It's all of that variety and sending it out, that I think we will start to see these technologies and resources that have been developed sent out around that time frame. And we'll also see, as you talk about identity, Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, which is the sign about identity. And Saturn is there to structure something new, and Neptune is there to kind of give us some new vision about that. So there's a lot that's tying in with the 2025 timeframe, with our new sense of spiritualized identity, with language and movement that is expanding, more options. And then that Pluto in Aquarius will be steady there. That's really just going to do a deep dive into everything futuristic and of the sky for a long while. Um, but so that's a little bit of the stars in the update that kind of related to that, because the identity game is going to be big for the whole collective.
Right. And we need to wrap up because I've got an appointment in a couple of minutes. But for those of you that have made it this far in the video, thank you for staying this far, because I know people don't watch to the end. But I would love for the people that are observing this to type in the box topics they'd like to see us discuss. Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh,
Like,
yes. Yes, yes, yes. Anybody out there that's watching this, whether you know Stephanie or me or you don't, feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube video about any questions you might have or topics that you'd like to hear us talk about. If you know us in person, you should know some way to get in touch with us on Facebook or wherever. Um, and yeah, that would be awesome, because I'm open to talking about weird stuff wherever it goes.
weird stuff wherever it goes. And do you want to share any of our information before we wrap up?
Sure. Just real quick before, if anybody's looking for us online, my website is leadintogold.com, and that's LEAD, the letter N, the number two, GOLD.com. You can find all my stuff basically there. Stephanie is Intuitive Wisdom Today. Those three words, intuitivewisdomtoday.com. She can be found there, and we're open to any requests or questions. And we both do personal sessions and work when people are looking for things related to our other skills. So we're
You know
hoping
what
people
else
enjoy the conversations.
I think they
Go ahead.
will. Before you hit stop on the recording, we need to think of an ending tagline. We each need, I don't have one yet, but you know how you say something like, Captain Picard on Star Trek and make it so, or, engaged, whatever. We need to think
All
of
right.
each of us needs an
Well,
end tagline.
we will have to find, we are here now to
Uh,
attract an ending tagline. So if anybody has a good ending tagline for us, you can suggest
yeah.
that as well.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. You have a wonderful rest of the day. It was fun hanging out. Later, Stephanie.
Bye.